The heavy steel door of the precinct armory slammed shut behind us, echoing in the confined space, and I knew instantly that my career, and possibly my entire sanity, was about to detonate. Hey everyone, before we get deep into this intense tactical story, drop a comment below and let me know what city or country you are listening from right now. I always love seeing where you all are tuning in from. Anyway, back to the armory. It was supposed to be a standard gear check after a grueling 14-hour raid. Nothing out of the ordinary. Just the smell of gun oil, the metallic clatter of magazines being stripped, and the heavy exhaustion that follows a high-stakes operation. In the Tactical Response Unit, trust is your only actual currency. You do not survive a breach if the guy stacked up behind you hesitates. You do not clear a room if your partner is distracted. Kalen and I had been a two-man entry team for 3 years. He was the golden boy of the squad. Solid muscle, sharp instincts, always calm under fire. He had this infuriatingly perfect blonde crew cut that never seemed to get messy, even under a heavy Kevlar helmet. The guys in the unit practically worshipped his tactical skills. And me? I was the quiet one. The guy who calculated angles, double-checked the safety mechanisms, and spent way too much energy making sure my mask of perfect professionalism never slipped. I thought my cover was flawless. I really did. Until my phone buzzed on the metal workbench. I was bent over a disassembled rifle, my hands coated in carbon residue. I didn't even reach for the phone. I just glanced at the screen. Big mistake. Huge, catastrophic mistake. Kalen had been walking past to grab a cleaning rod, and he stopped. His eyes dropped to the glowing screen of my phone. The notification was sitting right there, impossible to miss. It was a message from my ex, Julian. Are you still playing the ultimate straight soldier for your meathead squad? Or are you actually going to be honest with yourself this weekend? There was this tiny pause, barely a second, but in our line of work, a second is a lifetime. The air in the armory suddenly felt way too thick to breathe. I froze, my brain completely stalled. Playing the straight soldier? Kalen repeated the words slowly, his deep voice carrying over the hum of the ventilation system. He didn't sound angry. He didn't sound disgusted. He just sounded focused, like he was analyzing a new piece of intel. My stomach dropped straight through the concrete floor. I let out a laugh. A sharp, ugly, fake laugh that sounded absolutely terrible echoing in the small room. "It is just a joke," I said quickly, wiping my greasy hands on a rag. "Julian is an idiot. He sends stupid stuff all the time." Kalen did not laugh. He did not move. He just stood there, holding the metal cleaning rod, looking at me. His eyes were scanning my face, dissecting my reaction. "You are gay?" he asked. Just like that. No hesitation, no whispering. Straight to the point, exactly the way he handled everything else in life. My heart was hammering so hard against my ribs, I thought it might crack them. I considered lying. I had a dozen lies queued up in my head. But looking at him, standing there in his dark tactical gear, his expression completely unreadable, lying felt like a tactical error. So I swallowed the massive lump in my throat, looked down at the rifle parts scattered across the bench, and said, "Yeah." Silence. Not the focused, comfortable silence we shared in the back of an armored transport before a breach. This was suffocating, heavy, dangerous. "Oh," Kalen said softly. That was it. No questions about how long I had been hiding it. No comments about the squad. Just, "Oh." We finished cleaning our weapons without saying another word. The metallic clicks and slides of the guns were the only sounds in the room. I could feel the shift. The foundation of our entire partnership had just cracked, and I had absolutely no idea how deep the damage went. The next few days were pure psychological torture. I told myself I was being paranoid, that the unit was a professional environment and personal lives did not matter. But everything felt different. The locker room was the worst. We used to change out of our gear at the same time, complaining about the weight of the ceramic plates, tossing jokes back and forth. But after that night in the armory, Kalen started shifting his routine. Not completely, but just enough. He would wait until I was putting my uniform shirt on before he started taking his tactical vest off. If we ended up near the showers at the same time, he would suddenly remember he needed to check his locker again. It was subtle. If you did not know us, you would never notice. But I knew him. I knew every habit, every movement, and I noticed every single adjustment he made to avoid being too relaxed around me. I hated it. I felt toxic. I felt like a threat he was trying to manage. It escalated during a surveillance assignment later that week. We were crammed into the back of an unmarked van in a terrible part of the city. The space was incredibly tight. 2 folding chairs, a bank of glowing monitors, and a whole lot of stale air. Our knees were practically touching. We had been sitting there in silence for 3 hours. The hum of the electronics was driving me insane. I kept staring at the thermal imaging screen, trying to pretend I was hyper-focused on the target building. You have been checking your watch every 5 minutes. Kalen's voice broke the silence, making me jump slightly. I did not realize I was doing it. I muttered, keeping my eyes glued to the monitor. Just tired. The van is small, he stated, shifting his weight. His combat boot brushed against mine, and he pulled it back instantly, like he had touched a live wire. The movement made my chest tighten with a sharp spike of frustration. Look, if you want me to request a different partner for the next rotation, just say the word. The words tumbled out of my mouth before I could stop them. My voice was tighter, angrier than I intended. Kalen finally looked away from the street-level camera feed and turned his head toward me. The blue light from the monitors cast deep shadows across his face. What are you talking about? He asked, his tone carefully neutral. Do not play dumb, Kalen, I snapped, gripping the edge of the console. Ever since the armory, you have been treating me like I am carrying a contagious disease. You avoid me in the locker room. You barely talk to me on patrol. If you have a problem with me, be a man and just say it so we can break up the team and move on. Kalen's jaw clenched. The muscles in his neck tightened. He leaned slightly closer to me, the small space between us evaporating. I do not have a problem with you, he said, his voice dropping low. Then why are you acting like this? I shot back, turning to face him fully. Why are you suddenly wearing an undershirt in the locker room when you have not worn one in 3 years? Why do you pull away if we bump into each other? I am gay, Kalen. I am not a predator. I do not want you. He stared at me. The silence stretched out, thick and heavy. The yellow streetlights outside filtered through the tinted windows, illuminating the intense, stormy look in his eyes. He did not defend himself. He did not yell. He just looked at me with an expression I could not decode. That is not why I am pulling away, he said quietly. Then why? I demanded, my pulse pounding in my ears. Because it feels different now, he said. The words hit me like a physical blow, because I knew exactly what he meant. The air between us was completely electrified. Every glance, every accidental touch, it all felt loaded with an unbearable, unspoken weight. But hearing him admit it out loud stripped away all my defenses. I exhaled a shaky breath and rubbed my eyes. Look, I did not tell you because I knew this would happen. I knew it would make everything weird. We have to trust each other out there. We have to save each other's lives. We cannot do that if you are constantly overthinking everything I do. I am not overthinking everything you do, Kalen replied, his voice rough. I am overthinking what I am doing. I stopped rubbing my eyes and looked at him. What does that mean? He shook his head and turned back to the monitors, crossing his heavy arms over his tactical vest. Nothing. Forget it. Watch the street. The rest of the shift was agonizing. The tension did not dissipate. It crystallized. I spent the next 48 hours replaying his words in my head. I am overthinking what I am doing. It made no sense. He was the straightest guy I knew. He had a different girl on his arm at every squad function. He was the definition of standard issue, tactical alpha male. I told myself I was misinterpreting things. I was projecting my own suppressed anxiety onto him. We had to pass an advanced live fire qualification that Friday. It was a high-stress scenario. Shoot houses, pop-up targets, flashbangs, the works. You run it in pairs. We were standing in the holding area outside the concrete kill house, checking our magazines. The gunfire from the team ahead of us was deafening, even through our ear protection. I slid a loaded magazine into my rifle and slapped the bottom to seat it. I felt Kalen step up close behind me, closer than he needed to be. His chest was almost brushing my back. "Check my plate carrier," he said over the radio comms built into our headsets. I turned around. We were chest to chest in the narrow staging corridor. I reached out and ran my hands over the heavy ceramic plates on his chest and back, making sure the straps were locked in tight. It was a routine check. We had done it 1,000 times. But this time, my hands felt clumsy. The heat radiating off his body through the tactical gear was overwhelming. My knuckles brushed against his collarbone, and I felt him take a sharp, deep breath. "You are secure," I said, my voice sounding weirdly breathy over the radio. Kalen looked down at me. His eyes were incredibly intense, completely focused on my face. He did not step back. The corridor was tight, but not that tight. He was choosing to stand exactly where he was. "Are you focused?" he asked, his voice low and vibrating through my earpiece. "Yes," I lied, trying to ignore the way my heart was hammering against my own armor. "You are distracted," he stated. "I am fine," I snapped back, taking a half step backward. "No, you are not," Kalen pressed, stepping forward to close the gap I had just created. "You have been totally out of sync since the van." "What do you want me to do, Kalen?" I asked, my frustration boiling over. "I want you to talk to me. I want you to explain what is going on in your head." "Why? So you can analyze it? So you can figure out how broken your partner is?" I demanded. He reached out and grabbed my shoulder. His grip was firm, grounding. The heavy tactical glove felt rough against my uniform. "No," he said, his voice dropping an octave, "so I can figure out what is going on in mine." The buzzer sounded, signaling our turn in the kill house. We ripped through the course on pure muscle memory. Doors kicked, flashbangs tossed, targets neutralized. But my mind was completely scrambled. Every time we moved past each other in a narrow doorway, every time we stacked up against a wall, the physical contact sent a jolt of pure adrenaline straight into my spine that had absolutely nothing to do with the live ammunition we were firing. When we finished, we walked back to the armory to drop our gear. We were the last ones there. The rest of the squad had already headed out to the local bar. The room was totally silent except for the metallic clinking of our weapons being locked into the racks. I pulled off my helmet and ran a hand through my sweaty hair, taking a deep breath of the cool air. I felt completely drained. Kalen unbuckled his tactical vest and dropped it heavily onto the bench. He stood there in his dark undershirt, his back to me, gripping the edge of the metal table. "We did good out there," I offered, trying to force things back to normal. "We were a second slow on the third breach," he replied, not turning around. "Only because you hesitated at the door," I pointed out. "I did not hesitate." "Yes, you did. You stopped. I saw it." Kalen finally turned around. His face was flushed, his jaw tight. He walked toward me. He did not stop at a polite conversational distance. He kept walking until he was standing right in front of me, invading my personal space entirely. "I hesitated because I was looking at you," he said, the words coming out, aggressive, almost angry. I frowned, feeling a sudden wave of defensive panic. "What? Why?" "I am supposed to be watching my sector, Kalen. You do not need to babysit me." "I am not babysitting you," he practically shouted, his voice echoing sharply off the concrete walls. "Then what the hell are you doing?" I yelled back, my own temper flaring. He grabbed the front of my shirt. not violently, but with an intense, desperate kind of grip. He pulled me an inch closer. "Because I cannot stop looking at you," he said, his voice suddenly dropping to a harsh whisper. The air rushed out of my lungs. I just stared at him, my brain completely short-circuiting. The heavy scent of gunpowder and sweat surrounded us. His eyes were wide, panicked, and fiercely determined all at once. "What?" I managed to choke out. Kalen let out a ragged breath and rested his forehead against mine. The contact sent a shockwave straight to my core. I told myself it was just shock. He whispered, his breath warm against my face. "When I saw that message on your phone, I told myself I was just surprised. But then I started thinking about it, thinking about you, thinking about the fact that you like men, and my brain completely stopped working." "You are straight," I whispered back, terrified to move, terrified to break whatever this fragile, insane moment was. "I thought I was," he admitted, his grip on my shirt loosening, his hands sliding slowly up to grip my shoulders. "I really did. But every time I look at you now, every time we are in that damn van or standing in the corridor, I feel like my chest is going to cave in." My pulse was roaring in my ears. This was impossible. This was a tactical disaster. This was everything I had spent 3 years desperately trying not to want. "Kalen," I said, my voice shaking, "this is dangerous. We work together. Our lives depend on each other. If this goes wrong, I know," he interrupted, his thumbs pressing firmly into my shoulders. "I know all the risks. I have calculated every single one of them for the last 6 days." "And?" I asked, barely breathing. "And I do not care," he said. He did not wait for me to argue. He did not give me time to build another defensive wall. He closed the tiny fraction of space between us and pressed his lips to mine. The impact of it completely shattered every logical thought in my head. It was not a tentative, questioning kiss. It was decisive. It was heavy and desperate, built on years of repressed tension and the absolute chaos of the last week. My hands moved entirely on their own, grabbing the thick material of his shirt, pulling him harder against me. He tasted like sweat and adrenaline, and the sheer force of him pressing against me felt like standing in the blast radius of an explosion. My mind was screaming that this was a terrible idea, that this would destroy the team, that this was going to ruin everything. But my body completely ignored the warnings. I kissed him back with a fierce, reckless energy. We stumbled backward slightly, my back hitting the cold metal of the locker doors. Kalen's hands moved to my neck, his fingers tangling in my hair, anchoring me down. We stayed like that for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. The reality of where we were, of who we were, crashed down on us simultaneously. We broke apart, both of us breathing heavily, staring at each other in the dim light of the armory. Kalen stepped back half a pace, his chest heaving. His eyes were blown wide, scanning my face for a reaction. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand, completely stunned. "Okay," I breathed out. "Yeah," Kalen agreed, his voice rough. "Okay." The silence that followed was entirely different from the one in the van. It was not suffocating anymore. It was charged with a massive, terrifying sense of possibility. "Are you going to tell me that was a mistake?" Kalen asked, his eyes narrowing slightly, daring me to lie to him. I looked at him, at the blonde hair, the broad shoulders, the intense stare that I had trusted with my life 100 times over. "No," I answered honestly. "I am not going to say that." "Good." He nodded once, a sharp, tactical movement. "Because I am not either." We did not figure everything out that night. We did not suddenly know how to navigate the complicated nightmare of being a couple inside a highly aggressive, hyper-masculine tactical squad. The risks were still massive. The potential for disaster was enormous. But as we finally packed up our bags and walked out of the armory together, our shoulders brushing in the narrow hallway, the crushing weight of the anxiety was gone. It was replaced by something solid, something real. We had a new mission, and for the first time in my life, I was absolutely sure I had the right partner for it. What do you guys think? Should they try to hide their relationship from the rest of the tactical squad, or just face the consequences head on? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.